Hello and welcome to Streetfighting Chess. My name is Burnett. I'm known as Street Fighter on chess.com, an excellent website where I post quite a lot of articles, and I'm going to be posting videos from now on in my coaching group. The game I'm going to show you today was played yesterday in the Richardson Cup final. That's Scotland's premier team event, so it was a very, very important match. I was playing black against Neil Farrell, a very strong positional minded player. Now I have a good record against Neil overall, but my last two games had seen me being outplayed completely. So not only was it important from a team point of view, but not wishing to be beaten 3 times in a row, it was important personally as well that I get a good result here, play a good game. So let's look. Neil opened with d4, which he normally does. I played a flexible knight f6, and Neil played knight f3. That was slightly unusual. I expected him just to play the main c4 openings and leave himself with a few different options here, a few more options. So I play c5 here, aiming for one of my Burnett type setups. For those of you who don't know this opening at all, taking here, not a great idea. Black can simply play queen check and recapture the pawn. So Neil plays d5, which gains some space and is probably the best move in this position. I play d6, and then c4, and now e5. Now this structure here brings in the check Benoni, one of my favourites. I've used it for years now and scored very well with it. It might look like white could take here en passant, which he can, but after recapturing with the pawn, you can see there's an open F file when black finally castles, and also black has far more central control here with these 3 pawns here. So true to his style, Neil just develops and keeps the space advantage. I play this little move a6, which is quite useful. In the middle game I might be looking to play b5, e4, consolidating the centre, and knight d7. Now if we look at this pawn structure, white has a space advantage based on these 3 pawns. Black has a very solid centre, but the centre is completely blocked, and when the centre is blocked, play usually will take place on the flanks. And for a middle game strategy, white might be looking to play for b4 to aim at the head of the structure here, or f4, or possibly even both in certain lines. And black, for his part, is obviously going to be aiming at the base of the white structure here, with b5 on the queen's side and possibly f5 on the king's side. So these pawn breaks will be the main sort of focus for the middle game strategies for both sides. In the meantime, white just develops. Of course, it's better just to develop than aim for any immediate kind of attacks. Now g6, this looks a bit strange because when the bishop comes here, it's going to be aiming at my own pawn. It's going to be completely blocked here. But there is a method behind this kind of development madness. I can intend to play this knight h5 into f4, and should white ever take and the pawn recaptures, any bishop here is then going to have a life, and quite a good one along this long diagonal. So I'm not overly concerned about putting the bishop here. There is an alternative in just playing the bishop here, moving the knight and trying to play for bishop g5, but the g6, bishop g7 line seems to suit me quite well. White plays h3, he wants a bishop on this square but doesn't want it to be harassed by the knight, so it's a useful little move. And now bishop g7. And white played bishop g5 here. After the game, in the post-mortem, Neil said he wasn't sure if he wanted to provoke this move or not. It was possible for the bishop just to come here immediately, but there can't be anything wrong with bishop g5. So I chase it, bishop goes back, and now, as mentioned, the knight comes to this square, aiming at this square here, f4. And now white came up with quite an interesting idea. He undeveloped a knight, so that the bishop and the queen are attacking h5. I have the option here of reinforcing the knight with knight d to f6, but that kind of precludes any plan with f5, so it's playable. It might even be the best, but In the game I just retreated a knight after a bit of thought. If white can take a tempo to go back undeveloping, then there should be no problem with black doing the same. And now if white had simply repeated, then I was considering repeating myself. It's a team match and playing black against a strong opponent, and if it was an early draw, then so be it. I wouldn't do this in a normal tournament. Of course I would have just reinforced the knight here and played the game on, but in a team match things are slightly different. But he didn't. Neil's a strong player and he has a good will to win, so he continued the game here, queen to d2. And now knight f8. Now this is going to look very strange to most people. They seem to be grovelling about here, knights to here and knight back, and then this knight coming back onto the back rank. But it will have a life. As soon as I play g5 and knight g6, the knight will be quite well positioned, again aiming at this f4 square. It also allows the bishop to come here with this other middle game plan of b5. So it's not a bad move in itself. Now white castled, queenside. I play g5. White plays g3. That's not only just to control black pieces coming here, but also perhaps to play this middle game break I mentioned earlier, f4. But that will be double-edged, as I said. If I can take here, this bishop comes to life. Now white's king's on that side of the board, and a b5 push will open things on that, on the queen side. Now I just develop first of all, knight g6 and rook f1. Now it's very clear what white plans to do. He is certainly planning this f4 push. Now I delay it by a move by playing queen e7. And of course if f4 comes, then when I take here, let's just show it. Let's be very careful because this pawn is hanging. And for example, if we played it immediately, I win a pawn, but not only that, I'm attacking his rook. So chasing the queen isn't possible because the rook goes, and attacking the queen from the other side to defend the rook, and this pawn goes, and white would just be lost here. So he has to be careful of these moves. And instead he plays rook h2. That's well intentioned, avoids these problems when if the queen comes to e4. Also when the game opens up, the rook can come to f2. Could be a problem for me. Or it can come to g2 when the game opens up. And I have to be careful with some sensitive pieces on the g file. So seeing that white's ready to launch himself with f4, I have to get ready for some counterplay. Develop the bishop and aim for b5 straight away. And this b5, with possibly even b4, attacking the knight, will undermine this pawn, which is lacking in defence as we saw in the previous line. A knight coming here also gains a tempo on the queen. So the game's already taken on a double-edged look to it. My king, I don't want to be going this side if I'm playing b5 and the position opens, and nor do I really want to be going on this side because his rook's here and here. If he was on g2, the f file and the queen and bishop aiming up towards my king. Probably not a good idea to be sitting there. So for the moment, I'll sit the king in the centre. I have to be careful for any tactics if the position opens with my king and queen being on the e file, but we can deal with that as and when it arises. So bishop d7, white gets on with f4 immediately. And now these moves came without too much thought because the square is very useful and I need to open the diagonal. White recaptures, I take here, and the bishop recaptures. And now I play b5 immediately. When the position opens, time's a bit, there's more of the essence here. I have to do something quickly to distract white from, for example, rook here, and even pushing here just to get some squares and open lines against my king and queen. So I have to play quickly here. Now, white doesn't really want to open this position up on the queen side. Suddenly my rook's here, bishop hitting b2, the knight coming to e4. If things open up very quickly, white's king's going to be in a lot of trouble. So instead of taking here, he plays rook to g2. Now I have to be careful because my bishop would be hanging in quite a lot of lines. I played b4 here, which seems sensible. I win this pawn for free, almost for free, and I attack his queen in the process. But after I played this move and white retreated, I started wondering whether I ought to have played maybe b takes c4. The idea of putting the rook on this file and aiming at the sensitive b2 square. It's hard to say. The way the game went seemed to be okay for me, so I suppose it's up to white to find an improvement. So I'm not going to be harsh on myself here. b4 seems logical and it worked, so let's see how this went on here. So knight takes e4, I'm hitting the queen. The queen just sidesteps here. Now I do have to be careful that white can't just play bishop here, or rook here, and suddenly I'm in a lot of trouble. I get my king out of the way immediately now. Because the queen side is more blocked than in some other lines, and my bishop does cover this important square here, so this queen can't get into the position immediately. I'm probably quite safe castling queenside, and it gets my king off this possible pin on the e-file of my queen. Now white continues, aiming firstly at the knight and at the second knight behind it. Now I would like to play bishop f5 perhaps, but white's knight rejoins the action, attacks here, and is probably winning straight away. And the other move that might have been quite nice would be f5, just to solidify this knight in a very good square, but unfortunately it leaves this knight hanging to the rook. So after I castle, bishop d3, I have this move knight g5, which is quite a good move. It blocks some of the action on the g-file. It does give white the pawn back, but I'd reasoned that if the position opens up, some of the pieces come off, my other pieces are actually going to be very well placed for action. One of the most important aspects of this position, which might not be quite so clear just now, is, this e5 square here. White doesn't have a pawn to attack it, so if I can get a piece safely on there and reinforced, then it's going to be a very big piece indeed and very hard for white to deal with. So Neil takes the pawn back, his queen's very active here, but again I reasoned that if I can find the move just to kick the queen away, then I have nothing to worry about. So I played this move here, which is very good, bishop e5. Now one of the lines we looked at after the game, which I hadn't really considered deeply during the game, was rook e2. And now white has a very strong threat here of rook takes e5, and when I recapture, the queen is suddenly wreaking havoc on the queen side. I'm likely to lose most of these pawns with check, and I really want to avoid that. So had he played rook e2, came to the conclusion that knight f7 is a very strong move. The reason for that is it gives support to e5, it allows one or other of the rook to kick the queen away, and as soon as that queen's away I don't have to particularly worry about this threat along here. And it follows a sort of positional concept of reinforcement, reinforcing your strong points. The strong point is e5. The knight wasn't doing much on g5, now that the g-file isn't a problem for me. So the knight would retreat, support e5, threaten to kick the queen, and black has a clear advantage. This pawn is also weak, and white's knights aren't taking any part in the game, so it would take a few moves before white could drum up any kind of threats. So after bishop e5 he didn't play this move, and instead he entered quite a tactical line, which I'm going to cover in part 2 because I'm limited to 15 minutes here at the moment. So in part 2 we'll see what happened in the rest of this game. Okay, thank you. Bye now.